Welcome everyone to Somerford's Women in Tech series of podcasts. Where I'm talking to people who identify as women who work in tech about their work and not about being a woman necessarily. The aim is that you'll understand some of the challenges in the tech industry and what your peers are doing about it. And if you're thinking of joining the tech industry as a woman, you can check out these conversations on somerfordassociates.com, our podcast page, and you'll see that there are women out there doing some really interesting stuff. So you'd imagine my joy when I met Brigadier Sara Sharkey, who heads up a delivery team within Defence Digital. Because if you're going to talk to someone who holds their own in a largely male environment, why not talk about that and go to the extreme by going to someone who has done that and held her own throughout in the army as well. So it's going to be really interesting. Thank you. Welcome, Sarah. Sarah or Sara? Am I always saying it wrong?
It's Sarah. It's fine. It's not
Yay!
Sarah.
Cool. You probably hear that so many times.
I answer to either now, to be honest.
Yeah, same with me and Annie, because I've got an E. And what we'll do is I'll ask Sarah to go through her background and her role now. We'll then talk about challenges that she's experiencing in the industry. What I mean, like technical challenges. Not about being a woman, and we'll end with some insights from her about being a woman in tech, what she advises us. So, welcome.
Thank you.
Let's start with your background then. How did you get to where you are now?
So, it's a little bit accidental, I think, probably like many people I talk to. In fact, I'm always struck by the number of senior women I meet who are in tech, not the number of them, but the ones that I do meet, how many of them haven't come from a background which you might have predicted. They've normally come in through some fairly orthogonal manner into technology. Now, I will confess to having been an ardent, passionate scientist from a very, very young age. I was going to be the next Marie Curie, of course, and I was fascinated by all things chemistry.
That's cool.
And did chemistry degree, but then I got to my thesis, and after 5 weeks of standing in a lab watching test tubes change color, I kind of thought maybe not.
Decided that was not your thing.
Not my
Marie
thing.
Curie.
Not quite exciting enough. So I had a look around, and there happened to be a visit that week by the Army liaison officer into our careers office. And the Army is a little bit like an escalator. You kind of put your toe on the end of the escalator, and the next thing it felt like this to me. I arrived at Sandhurst, the Royal Military Academy of Sandhurst, with my ironing board under my arm on what's called Ironing Board Sunday, and signed up for 3 years. And I had intended to do 3 years to do something completely different, shock and amaze all my friends and family that I'd done something so unusual, because I have no military connections in my family, apart from a little bit of national service from my dad. But I have found the career in the army to be constantly evolving, constantly challenging, loads of new avenues. Many people don't realize this. You don't do the same job for 30 years. You do very, very different jobs throughout. So, over that time, I have done everything from training phase 1 soldiers to being on operations in Bosnia and Iraq, commanding communications, to force generation, force development, through to what I do now, which is run cloud and application services for Defence Digital. Also, a few other big meaty jobs in there, commanded at regiment level, squadron level. So you get to do a huge variety of jobs in a huge variety of places. I've lost track of the amount of addresses I've had over that period. But it's every time you think about looking outside, something really fascinating comes up inside to keep you. But I've been lucky in that throughout that I've had the thread of technology and IT in particular. Clearly, when I joined, it's almost embarrassing to admit that mobile phones didn't really exist. And so that the whole digitization piece is something we've had to grow up with and develop with. And it's where I've really found my feet in the last 8 years, where I really specialized in cloud and applications.
In the army then, are there different like sort of sections which have, so you can have a sort of technology section that you can go up through. Is that?
Yeah, so we have different CAT badges, and some of those CAT badges are technical cores. For example, the Royal Signals, where I grew up, but also the Royal Electrical and Mechanical Engineers, the Royal Engineers. So we have some very technical cores, but clearly, some of the fighting arms, the infantry, cavalry, those sort of arms and services aren't so technical, and so they have a different side of warfare that they look at. So it's many. You always think of the army as a mini country, really. We have everything from chefs to logisticians to signallers. So you have the whole gamut of a small country within the army. So there's lots of oppressions. In fact, one amazing fact that many people don't appreciate is the army has one of the biggest apprenticeships in the country, because most of our junior soldiers are on an apprenticeship of some form or another, because they need to learn their trade. And we take people without any skills and become tradespeople very early on, but we take them from that zero to hero, and that mastery, as well as imbibing all the leadership skills and the self-determination and those kind of
It's wonderful for that, isn't it? It really
it's huge.
is.
Yeah, I mean,
We will,
ex-service personnel as veterans and future employees are, they should be given an automatic look, because they'll have a resilience around them that it can't be trained in
yeah,
many other walks of life.
yeah. I've certainly, we've had quite a few. We've got a military covenant in Somerford, and even though the CVs are difficult to read because you're like, what does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's worth interviewing to find out, and then generally it's super impressive. Just have to translate it into civvy speak in a way. So that's interesting. So Defence Digital now, and you do the cloud and app. So is that sort of like the internal support for all of the military's digital platforms? What's
Not
this room?
not not for all yet.
Mhm.
So the team I've got, or the team I lead, it's not particularly nationally named Application Services and DevOps, was set up about 6 years ago to really help Defence's journey into exploiting cloud services,
Mhm.
but also bringing together some of the applications platforms that were a little bit orphaned into a single team.
Yeah.
And it's a model that will continue to iterate and evolve as we go forward. So we provide trying to move cloud and hosting up the stack, so that each different application doesn't need to provide its own hosting. That we can
Mm.
provide, we call it mod cloud, generic ubiquitous cloud service for defense. It becomes a lot more like your electricity or your water. You wouldn't go and build your own electricity station in order to get electricity for your application project. You just go and plug in the wall, and it's kind of that kind of service we're looking at. We're trying to move, trying to enable the frontline commands and the wider departments in defence to be able to move up the business stack, really, and to really focus on what they need, which is the applications, the data and the insights and the AI and the ML. But they need that supported by a digital backbone.
Yeah.
And so what we're seeking to do is to provide that more generic digital backbone in defence.
Yes. So it's like the migration to the cloud that a lot of civilian companies are going through. But because you have to be far more secure, you've got your own cloud, the mod cloud.
Well, no. So mod cloud is actually underpinned by both AWS and Azure
Oh,
currently. So
interesting.
we put controls, just put a few additional controls around those platforms. We need to exploit hyperscale cloud in no differently from any other organization. That the features, the resiliency, the capabilities within those platforms, and certainly for our lower classification levels, it's a really good secure platform.
No brainer then.
It's a
Okay.
no-brainer.
So actually it's about helping the frontline people who just really want to focus on using this app services to just dish off the management of the app to you guys. Is that right?
Yeah, so instead of dish off the management of the underlying platform and the monitoring and the services around it, I don't know about you, but my experience is if people are responsible for their own application and their own data, they tend to look after it a bit better.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so we like them to be responsible for their own compute and storage costs, for example, to make sure they're
Okay.
managing their compute and storage costs. And we like them to be responsible for their own data, because it's their data in that
Mhm.
application and their own content. But you've got numerous mechanisms to provide help and guidance and support for that.
That makes a lot of sense. So, you have a team of like how many people help you with this?
So within my current team, there's gusting about 400. I say 400 because it kind of veers and hauls depending on where projects are in their life cycle. Because it's not just cloud that I do. I also have teams looking after the medical information services arena. We do identity services. We do all the operational application services as well. I've also got an outstanding little team called NJOPS currently, who are a team of engineers who just go and do all the difficult things in terms of
That sounds fun.
well, yeah, they have a ball, but they work really hard, and they have a very unique skill set which allows them to go and integrate things together that aren't integrating. Whether that's on, we had a few of them on the carrier just before it sailed, just helping for some last minute sort of issues. We have them deployed all over the world, moving bits of kit, and sometimes designing little things that will just allow different systems to interface together. So they're kind of they're the fixers of the team. So they're a really exciting little team. And then a whole bunch of other bits and pieces as well within my team. So that ebbs and flows all the way from design to delivery to operate of those live services.
Yeah. I always find it so impressive when I speak to people who've got roles like you. And when I say my team, I've got like 20 or so. You're like, oh, gusting 400.
It's interesting with the military career. So I'm currently a brigadier, but I actually had more people under command when I was lieutenant colonel. When I was running, when I had the privilege of commanding 10 Signal Regiment, the regiment was over 500 strong, set over 5 locations with people permanently deployed in operations. So it's very much around the role and where you find yourself and what you're doing,
Yeah.
rather than a span of command that necessarily goes with the rank.
No. And it's really nice with the sort of support systems that you have for that. You're not making up your HR systems. They're there for you already. Anyway, this is an aside. It's just for me, really. I suppose maybe we can edit that bit out. Anyway, so what about the challenges that you're finding at the moment? I don't know if we can call ourselves post-pandemic yet, but perhaps with all of that sort of trying to move it more into the cloud model. I'm not sure what you're calling that program. And also dealing with post-pandemic. Is anything coming up that is particularly challenging?
Yeah, you said something earlier, Anne, about a lot of the challenges, a lot of the delivery models I'm using are no different, moving to cloud than the rest of industry. So, in fact, a lot of my team, our skill sets are very comparable to our industry colleagues who are doing this, and our government colleagues who are doing this elsewhere. We do have a few nuances around cluttered, congested, and deployed, and also the security threat to defence, but. In general, so those challenges, so the issues are the same, the solutions are very similar, but therefore the challenges are also very similar.
Mm-hmm.
And ours, these will, I'm sure, resonate. The return to the office. How are we going to embrace the benefits of what we've learned over the last 12 months? But how do we make sure we've not missed out on some critical things? And certainly with my own team, the thing we're going to be wrestling with is how do we make hybrid working work? We've all been on conferences. I was on one the other day where half the room is on the laptop and half the room is in the room, and it doesn't work because the people on the laptops can't hear everybody in the room, or they don't feel like they can have a conversation, or they have a separate chat net going that the people in the room can't see. And so it works really well for transactional meetings where everybody has a little speaking part and it's an update, or there's a kind of process to it. So my portfolio reviews work really well because one person's briefing, I'm asking questions, and then people ask questions. But when you're trying to have a workshop, brainstorm something, really understand the issues, it really doesn't work. And it's all those little what I call nano connections that we're missing between people. And I'm sure how many of us have met somebody in the last 12 months that have been in your team for 12 months and you're shocked they're 5'2" or 6'1" because you had no idea, because you've only ever seen them sitting down if you have seen them before.
It's so hard to bump into people and know what their mood is, or to know how they're feeling, or without yes, you have to sort of almost arrange, or it feels really rude when you're ringing someone and you're not like, there's nothing serious, no one needs to panic, you're just calling for a catch up.
But certainly the culture in my team has been, I don't have my own office, I use the same kitchen as everybody else and same loos, and so you kind of have all those. You become approachable because people see you every day, and you stop and chat, and you kind of share pictures of your dogs and whatever else it is. We've also got quite a vibrant running club, which we also haven't been able to do. We tend to do lots of team meetings and socials, which we've all had to do online. So, and it's normally those kind of meetings. We normally have little icebreaker events. We normally have little sort of group sessions so people get to know each other really well on a personal level. And I'm concerned that there's almost a kind of a long COVID element here that's not about the physicality, it's about the mental health of business, the business mental health, as to how much loyalty, how is our loyalty tested when we're online and we're remote? and we're not being part of that team ethos. And if I relate this back to the army, all the evidence points as the reasons why soldiers fight. It's mostly for their teammates. It's mostly for the people in their immediate team, their fire team, their section, their troop. There's a little bit back to Queen and country, but that's not the primary reason why they'll get really fight as they do, and that's a personal relationship. And I'm looking forward to being able to get that hybrid working model is, even if we just have a big party once every 4 weeks, so that everybody can just come and socialise and discuss. But also we can get some of those more nitty gritty workshops in place. But on the other hand, I think productivity, work-life balance, just health in general, apart from the fact we're sat down all day, even more so it feels, has improved. And as a real opportunity, I think, as well for around flexible working. One of the things I see a lot of, I've got very young children, for my age. It's an awful thing to say, but I see more firsthand as a senior leader what more junior women are going through when they're trying to have children in early career or mid career, and trying to and fathers as well that are increasingly sort of taking on that, wanting to take on that sort of that role, just trying to juggle that. Whereas the pandemic has shown us that we can work flexibly, and we can maybe have a bit more of our cake and eat it than we thought we could. And so therefore, on that STEM front, how do we tap into that? How do we create roles that allow people to work in a way more flexible model, which isn't around a full-time equivalent? I mean, what does that even mean? Full-time. What does that mean? 40-hour week? What does that actually mean? And I think we need to redefine that quite significantly.
Yeah. I'm so with you. I'm just enjoying hearing someone express it far more articulately than I can. Yeah. And so also perhaps there's this opportunity of increasing the supply of technical talent by embracing that flexible working at the moment, because I guess there's quite a high demand for digital talent or people who are happy in this world.
Yeah, the demand is outstripping the supply. Software is eating the world, whether that's gaming, digital twins, everything is going online. All businesses are going online. So everything from web design to the back end of that. The sort of digital marketplace is huge, and the demand for skill sets in there is huge. I've got a number of nieces and nephews, and I say to them, just don't do that. Go and do software. go and be a coder. Go and be a data analyst, because you'll be employable and employed. But that comes with that huge responsibility, because I don't think we've really got to behind the ethics of some of this. Particularly with the AI world. If a piece of AI does bad things, whether that's an electric car, or an AI car knocking somebody over, who's at fault? The manufacturer or the coder. So there's quite a lot of responsibility actually in digital, whether that's making sure services are secure by design from a GDPR perspective, or whether that's really thinking through the so what of that bit of code and what it might do. But absolutely, in terms of the demand versus supply is one of those challenges that we have at the moment. There's not enough supply to meet the future demand. And yet we are missing out on half the population, because I think it's something like 17% of females are in STEM roles in the country.
Yeah.
And how do we tap into that huge talent base and to make these roles just more attractive?
Yeah. And so if you have a positive kind of message to leave us with, it's been really interesting to hear like what your kind of role is, who your teams are, how you even got here, and like what you're grappling with. And honestly, the echoes are amazing to understand that in your role, and there are equivalents in all of the industry people I've been speaking to, is pretty much the same sort of issues that we're all dealing with, and we're on the same kind of cusp into cloud and things. What would you like to leave the listeners with?
So it's a message I use a lot when I do talks, because most of the talks I do, particularly in defence, tend to be to a male audience of a certain age, put it that way. And I always leave them with some statistics around the number of women who feel they have been, consciously or unconsciously discriminated against, whether that's quite often it's paternalism as opposed to misogyny. And I put those sort of stats up, and I just ask everyone to just really think about your behaviours. I'll give you a couple of examples. So I fell out with the Women's Institute in the high street before COVID, clearly, when they had a raffle, and they had a girls winner and a boys winner. And the girls winner had a pink basket, and the boys winner had a boys basket full of cars,
From
and
the
the girls were
Women's
full of unicorns.
Institute.
Yeah, and it's that sort of social conditioning really early that's having an impact. Even Amazon, if you go and buy a Kindle Fire,
Mhm.
and you get to download boys apps and girls apps. And I know this, I bought both my girls their Kindle Fire at the same time a few years ago, and one of my girls much prefers Paw Patrols and robot games than the other one. So I put one down as a boy, one down as a girl, and you can imagine what they were. The smorgasbord that turned up on their apps were pink unicorns for the girls and building apps for the boys. And I just thought, well, why are we surprised that we have this disconnect when right from an early age, even clothes in the shops, the boys have got robots on and cranes, and the girls have got butterflies and
But I feel it's got worse because of the tech industry in a way, because it's so much simpler to categorize and to sort out your stock or angle the adverts.
Yep.
And that speaks to your point about who's responsible for these things. And I mean, there's algorithms assuming when you go into Google and you search something, it'll go, "Oh, you're a girl and you usually search this, and therefore we'll feed you all of these things." And you get the echo chamber, and it just propagates it.
It really does. And is how do we, I don't know about you, but I deliberately follow some Twitter feeds and the websites of people I really can't stand. I can barely read what they write, but I feel like I should, just to make sure I'm puncturing my own echo chamber all the time. And I do it, to my girls the whole time as well. Yeah, I say, where have you got that from? Why do you think that? Have a look at this. What do you think? And I just try to make sure they're kind of critically thinking. So I think we all need to think critically. We all need to just really embrace technology, but as technology and not as our guiding conscience.
Yes, okay. Use it as our tool. Stay in charge there.
Precisely, exactly. If I could have that same mantra of my own children's use of iPads, that'd be great. But I don't feel like I'm in charge most of the time. But
no, that's really, really interesting. Thank you so much. And it's great to talk to you about your role and your background, and thank you for spending the time for us, because I'm sure you're extremely busy.
No, thanks, Anne. It's been a pleasure.
I hope you're enjoying our Women in Tech podcast series. At Somerford Associates, we are really passionate about platforming diverse voices. So check out somerfordassociates.com for the full Women in Tech series, and follow us for more inclusive content in the near future.